Hello everyone, it's Justin Dawson back with another episode of the All Things TechIE podcast. My God, how much can I unpack in the next hour? Between the Dublin Tech Summit, Infocom next week, the World Cup's going on, and I've also been in SCOMS in Edinburgh. That's just to tip the iceberg. Let's get right to it. It's the All Things TechIE podcast.
Here's the show that loves to talk about gadgets and gizmos, from A-Logic to Yamaha, cameras to control panels. You get what I mean. We love talking all things techie. In fact, that's the name of the show. And here is your host, Justin Dawson.
Welcome along, everyone. It's the All Things Techie podcast, available wherever you get your audio podcasts. We're also on YouTube and across the social network as Sir Justin Dawson is my handle. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, X, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, at Sir Justin Dawson, and my official website as well is www.sirjustindawson.com. And this episode and all previous episodes of the All Things Techie podcast is available on our official website, www.allthingstech.ie. Let me get the right website up and frame up. If you are watching on YouTube, you'll see the website there. This is episode 149 of the All Things Techie podcast, and we have a lot to unpack. Where do I start off? Last week, is it last week or is it the week before? My God, the weeks are just flying all into one. I was over in SCOMS for the Higher Ed AV Association SCOMS over in Edinburgh, partaking in a lot of workshops, plenty of drink and discussions, and touring around Edinburgh as well. I haven't been in Edinburgh in over 25 years easily. And what a great city it is. So we did University of Edinburgh. We did 3 universities. The names are just escaping my head at the moment. University of Edinburgh is one of them. Also had a great night where we went to Edinburgh Museum and had a full meal and Scotch haggis and toured around. It felt like night in the museum. It was really cool. People dressed up in all the Scottish regalia and kilts and everything. And my wife Jennifer has reminded me that I had to get a kilt, so I am getting the Clan Davidson kilt made in the not so distant future as well. Now, also have to mention that Infocom is literally just around the corner. It is starting on Monday, and have to mention that Infocom is starting and it is just around the corner, and we will be talking to Peter Herr from Shure about what Shure is bringing out at Infocom to be unveiled on Monday. Now, there has been some rumours going around, and we have a couple of exclusives there as well of what's coming out there. Also have a great interview from the Dublin Tech Summit. I was at the RDS a couple of weeks back, and there is a couple of people that I still have to interview from the Dublin Tech Summit, because it was a 2-day affair, plenty of talks on AI, but I didn't get to interview everyone over those 2 days, so a couple of Zoom recordings as well to go on too. We also have to talk about Apple and what their latest things that came out of their conference, and also Google only recently had their conference too. Nearly go hand in hand over the past month or so, and we will tell you the latest there. If you'd like to get in contact with the programme, find me across all the socials at Sir Justin Dawson, and the official website, www.allthingstech.ie. Now, let's start off with this. British soul and R&B songwriter Beverly Knight is to make Auracast broadcast audio available on 6 of her dates in her forthcoming Born to Perform. Now, this was a story that AV Magazine came out with in the past week. Knight is working on a sound engineer Adam Waller and his company Open Door Audio on the project. Auracast-enabled shows will take place in Bath, Bristol, London, Southend-on-Sea, Cardiff and Wolverhampton between the 19th and 30th of June. Writing on Instagram, the star said her mother, who has supported her from the sidelines since she was a 4-year-old child, singing in the pews at church, has now lost the ability to hear and wears a cochlear implant. Referring to her Auracast-enabled gigs, she added, "I'm excited to see the possibilities of this new technology and overjoyed that my mum gets to be one of the very first people to experience Auracast." Details of the system to be used were not specified in the tour announcement. However, Open Door Instagram account said the company has recently put the Ori system from Amtronic and Listen Technologies to the test at a live music event. Guests were able to access Auracast broadcast audio in a variety of ways. These included loop necklaces connected to receiver packs for hearing aid users with T-coil setting, headphones connected to receivers, and Auracast-enabled earbuds. The Auracast-enabled live gig tour comes as Auracast is set to be trialled on London buses. Auracast technology has already been deployed elsewhere in the UK, with notable installations at Bristol Temple Mead Station at Oxford University and the National Theatre in London. Prominent international Auracast projects include Frankfurt Airport in Germany, Stadium Taranaki in New Zealand, and the Sydney Opera House in Australia. However, Auracast compatible hearing aids are not yet available through Britain's National Health Service, meaning it could be some years before this is a widespread usage across England. Now, I think that this is something to really look out for, and having been over in Scoms, I've learned that it's not actually really Auracast as a whole that's holding up the process. They're still waiting to see buy-in from Apple with regards to iOS and the Bluetooth technology that goes with Auracast, but something that really needs to be done accessibility-wise. So just like, watch this space, I guess, listeners and viewers. This is the All Things Techie podcast. Now, last week I was at the Dublin Tech Summit in the RDS. Now, full disclosure, the acoustics in our room were a bit challenging, but the conversation was far too important to miss. I had the opportunity and privilege of sitting down with Andy Melchor, a true pioneer in the intersection of music, art, and immersive technology. Andy's career is nothing short of incredible. Building on his early classical piano training, he became an early adopter of digital music and eventually worked with EMI alongside absolute legends like Sir George Martin and David Bowie. He later pivoted to the emerging tech, serving as the digital tribal chief for the augmented reality startup Magic Leap. If that wasn't enough, he has co-produced the first ever virtual reality installations at MOMA with Bjork and collaborated with Massive Attack on everything from AI-driven art robots to remastering an album into synthetic DNA. Now Andy is tackling one of the biggest challenges in the modern music industry with his new company, Genotone. So what is Genotone all about? In an era where AI-driven production is the norm, Genotone is building a universal trust layer for audio. Rather than relying on blockchain hype, Genotone uses post-quantum cryptography, transparency logs, and open identifiers to make every single recording self-authenticating. Essentially, Genotone acts as a verifiable proof of origin. It ensures that the creator's identity and content travel directly with their work across all platforms, protecting artists and keeping human creativity recognisable, respected and free. We had a fascinating chat about this extraordinary career and the future of creative provenance. So have a listen to this interview, and apologies about the audio in this room. It was an old room in the RDS in Dublin. Take a listen. It's the All Things Techie podcast. We are up in a room outside of the actual show floor for the Dublin Tech Summit. high ceilings with like two audio geeks. That's like, well, more you than me probably. Andrew, in looking around the building and just going, oh, okay, for Dublin Tech Summit, but like a nice quiet environment to do this recording. Andrew, tell us a bit about yourself.
Pleased to be here. I am here because I'm giving a talk about my startup Genotone. Genotone's building artist-based provenance into music files.
Right.
And we hope by doing that it will offset some of the misery of deepfakes and generative AI, and also help protect artists' rights as everything starts going in a hyperscale generative AI world.
And there's so many areas there. Like, you've given me like so many questions already on that type of thing. But your background,
yes,
like we were talking about a bit off mic beforehand, you have been
a busybody
all around the world, pretty much, with different artists and
So we can go in reverse rather from the beginning when I was born.
Right. Let's keep that for another podcast.
Or six. Currently working as CTO of Massive Attack, the trip-hop band from Bristol. I've been doing that for over 10 years. I met Rob as a result of us geeking out on augmented reality glasses. I've also been working as advisor to Björk. I produced her VR album, Cura.
Name droppers.
There's a massive name drop. Sorry about that. And then, but that's provenance, and it's interesting because we're talking about provenance. So my provenance is how old am I? 40 odd years playing music. Being
you don't look it.
Oh, thanks very much.
Like, especially for the rock star lifestyle.
Oh, well, exactly. Well, I don't know how much rock star lifestyle there is. We're quite well behaved these days. It's a bit boring. But basically, started off as a musician, got into MIDI and synths, got into computers to record MIDI and synths, got into the internet because of distribution of MIDI synth music, and then worked for a major label, EMI. Now that's very interesting because I ended up working for David Bowie.
Wow.
He set up a thing called BowieNet in '98, which was the first artist-owned ISP. You could actually buy your internet dial-up from David Bowie, 25 years way ahead of his game.
These are things that I never knew about.
Well, I think somebody needs to write a book, and it might even be me.
Yes.
Because he was, he got almost like the first social network as well, because check this out, 1998, you could download an application called Worlds, and Worlds was basically this company from San Francisco who had created this thing called Bowie World. Right. And you downloaded it, and it basically was an avatar-based chat, multi-room virtual environment.
So you're talking about, and for all our listeners and viewers, this was before MySpace.
Before VR chat, MySpace, Facebook. And what happened was, you would take there was a gallery, you would take a suit, an outfit, like it could be a rabbit or whatever, and you would then wear this outfit into the room, and then it'd be avatars of other Bowie fans walking around the spaces. He'd been doing like GIF art, so it was like animated GIFs on the walls, right? This is 1998, right? And you moved around with cursor keys, and because it wasn't fast enough to do voice, you had to do chats, like chat rooms.
And as usual, who takes David Bowie seriously when he decides that he wants to create this?
What was funny about that, though, was that he used to go around anonymously and ask his fans about stuff, because he said, oh, it's great, because instead of being on stage going, I'm David Bowie, he would like sign up to people and go, what do you think of David's new album? And they'd like get first person feedback, real feedback. So anyway, I found myself in this unlikely situation where in the late 90s I got working at EMI, and they rolled me out in front of him because nobody knew what the hell he was talking about. So that was my baptism of fire. But now I'm here because, with relevance to what's going on at the moment, I've been building a provenance system that tries to embed at the time of creation of music in the digital audio workstation an embedded provenance signal that we hope will survive the transmission of music through the distribution network, and in that one fell swoop gets rid of all the AI slop and deepfakes, because those are not signed by real people. And then on the other case, it also hopefully starts matching up the unpaid royalties against tracks that have been put through the system.
Wow, like there's so many areas that we can go into here, and like it's recognizing both the notes that are being played in the music and the vocals. Yes.
Well, basically, no, it's not necessarily as granular as that can be.
Okay.
In the first instance, what it is when you have a piece of music and you're either self-recording and you're workstation like Ableton or Reaper or Cubase or Logic. And at the stage where your files are like coming together and you make the master file, when you mix down, what we're saying is at that point we should be able to embed a provenance signal. And what that is a genotone. We've called it genotone. And the idea is that you basically register for an ID for free. And that ID then is locked to you using whatever. We can use passports, we can use biomarkers, whatever. Standard sort of onboarding like you get in a financial services app or a passport, right? And then that file ID is locked into your genotone, which is then embedded into the file of the audio before you send that to distribution. So you send that to distribution, to Spotify, to Deezer, to wherever. Within that file transport, your ID is embedded, but it's not able to be removed without obviously being shown as having been tampered with. To your point, yes, it can be used as a granular level. You can embed it at the point where you're actually making music, but that's a couple of steps away. We're going to have to figure that one out over the next 2 years or so.
Yeah, and here's my mission to all the followers and listeners, and I'll say to you, I was in the days of pirate radio and downloading music. My teenage...
Disgraceful.
Yeah, my teenage
I've
years.
I've never downloaded any pirated music in my life.
You had the Napster, you had the entities that you were like, and then of course between dial-up and the beginnings of broadband and taking files at a clunk and like little bits and pieces and networks to download the song. Now the internet and fibre broadband and so forth is so much better. Now I always think like even with movie content and people trying to rip off movies and DVDs and so forth, if people remember what a DVD is, we'll get back to that at a later stage on the podcast. But sometimes you think, to get around this concept, couldn't someone try and rip off a song or notes of a song by just playing it back in real time?
Well, that's called a cover version. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Listen, at the end of the day, anything that spreads the word of creativity is cool.
Yeah.
And back in the old days, somebody not sat very far from you may have used a bunch of cracked software to teach himself how to use Photoshop. And to teach himself how to use Illustrator, Dreamweaver to make websites.
Or Cool Edit Pro before it became Adobe Audition.
And I thought, at that time in the 90s, I had all the gear, no idea. But then I needed to also train myself on how to use software tools. Now, I thought it was particularly valid, as I'm sure many other people do, that when you're on the upscale to try and teach yourself skills that are transferable, useful, creative, a little bit of leniency with things like, the odd registration here and the odd copy of a software package there. And music is currency, right?
Yes.
It's emotional, it's social currency. And, when you get to know people and you become friends, maybe you have some shared interests in music, photography, theatre, films, whatever. We use it as a currency. Therefore, it has value. And as a result, it has value, but that doesn't necessarily give you the rights to necessarily make counterfeits, should we say, right? Yeah. So it's a bit like money, right? So you can have a €5 note, whatever currency note. It's very attractive to think that you might be able to copy that and duplicate it. And the way
money is king.
and I remember, interestingly, when laser digital scanners first came out, printers, you used to have them registered because obviously you could print money with them.
Of course,
right? Which is very interesting. So what we're saying is that because music is currency, and because at the moment that currency has been unprotected, so the equivalent of issuing notes without the little metal strip in them, or without the textured paper or the plastic window, all those things that have been created with printed money to stop you easily bootlegging it, are the same things we're trying to apply to music files. And what we're saying is, bad actors or good actors who are, skin, will always try and copy things and always try and feel the benefit and the warmth of creativity. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, per se, but there is something wrong with a huge hyperscale globally. You've got companies currently scraping all of the things that have ever been made by everyone, turning them into generative AI models, and then basically piping them back to us without any provenance.
I don't know the names of all the AI type of
tools that out there.
Suno and Udio are the two big
Okay,
ones.
but like that.
But there's lots.
But there is lots. Like there is room for film productions when it's done legally, ethically, authentically, where I will use Bohemian Rhapsody, for example, and like the last scene, if for people that's watched the Bohemian Rhapsody film, and they're in Wembley Stadium, and let's try and make it look like it's Wembley Stadium, and they're doing Live Aid.
Yeah.
And you just go, well, that's entertainment value, and they've obviously got rights to it. But then you have people recreating, let's say, Michael Jackson and stuff, people that are dead artists, and then trying to also have their quirkiness of AI on it and going, let's get Michael Jackson to sing a song about puppies or something like that. And you go, what's the point? And surely you're upsetting family members and also infringing on copyright.
Well, exactly. Reanimation is not necessarily great. Robin Williams, the deceased actor, Hollywood actor, comedy actor.
Oh, that's right, he did.
He in his will said he refused to have his likeness being used for any kind of CGI reanimation of himself. And I think he learned a lesson.
And his daughter got
very upset because fans were sending like make-believe AI videos of him alive, telling jokes.
You have to go up on forums and say, please stop. Yeah,
exactly. And I think he learned the trick from Audrey Hepburn's estate, because I don't know if you remember, but in the 90s, I think there was or early noughties, there was an ad with Audrey Hepburn eating a chocolate bar or something.
Right.
And it was like, would she have done that if she was alive? Who knows?
Yes.
Would but there is definitely an idea here with likeness and provenance where, for instance, even just this podcast, the technology now exists where they grab a frame of you and a frame of me, they grab a bit of your voice, a bit of my voice, and they basically reanimate us for this podcast, not saying any of this.
Exactly. That's not trying to be bad to some of these AI people, companies, and even the bigger ones, the Googles of the world, right? I was playing around with Gemini the other day, trying to make an intro video for my podcast.
Yeah.
It put me with an English voice, literally lip sync was absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like me, but it
and then 11 Labs are translating people's voices into other languages you've never spoken. So I tried that. It's got me speaking Finnish and Polish, which I couldn't do on a good day ever. But it's with my voice. It's very convincing. I don't think there's anything wrong with any of that technology. All I'm saying, and all we're trying to say, is that at the point of creation, what sets us apart from machines is our humanity.
Yes.
And to try and create a spark of our humanness that travels forward into these server farms and cloud infrastructure. So at the other end of it, in 50 years' time, if some researchers are trying to understand what went on in this era, they'll be able to go, a machine made this, and a person made that.
Yes.
And a machine made this, or maybe even a person used a machine. I mean, I'm not anti-AI. Maybe a person used a bit of AI and a bit of various things, and he made this thing, or she made this thing.
But the other area I look at is like the likes of Paul McCartney, and you have Spotify, you have artists that they create, and people say artists are making loads of money, but they have to create a song that's going to sell in today's society, and then you probably know these numbers and stats better than me, but aren't they getting only a couple of cents per play on the likes of Spotify and so forth?
Yeah, so the cost base is low. I mean, David Bowie, actually, interestingly, having worked with him, he did a couple of things very originally. One of the ones was he released an MP3, one of the first MP3s of a song he released in the 90s. And I think at that point, the penny dropped with him. It was actually Telling Lies from the Earthling album. And I remember this very vividly. You had to download a archival tool to extract the zip file. Okay. Then you had to download an MP3 player. Mm-hmm. And then you had to download the MP3, and the whole thing took you about.
So that was its own MP3 player.
Yeah. So you had to download the whole stack, and then basically you could play Telling Lies. It was first, as far as I was aware, a digitally distributed single. I actually had that. And I think at that moment, the penny dropped with David, and he thought, this is going to really change the music distribution model. This is like mid-90s, right? And so what happened over 2 years, him and his manager, Bill Zisblatt, who's an accountant, still alive, Bill, hello Bill, is he came up with this idea of a Bowie bond. Yes. And Bowie bond was where basically David took what would be the future royalties from his catalogue. They did the maths on how much he'd sold and how much airtime had been sold in the last 5 years, I think. And then they factored that forward by 25, and they released a bond that was basically a royalty bond.
Right.
Now, he would take up front a fee from somebody investing in his bond for 25 years on the value of his catalogue. David basically made $50 million doing that. Prudential insurers paid 25, and I think it was EMI Virgin paid another 25.
Right.
But what David did is he basically mortgaged the future royalties of his catalogue because I think he realised that everybody was in for a bumpy ride. Because this was pre-Napster and pre-LimeWire.
Yes.
And what David had done is basically hedged and insured himself against what was about to happen with the collapse of music sales, right?
Right.
Very intelligent. Yeah. So the trouble with that is the bonds themselves, ironically, by 2003, got rated down to junk. Just above junk status, right? Because all the investors went, oh no, the music industry is knackered, right? Because they were waiting for Apple Music to turn up. And when Apple Music sort of charged in with the iTunes store, they saved everybody's bacon. Right? But the thing is with that is that he himself said that music is going to become like water, like a utility. And as a result, what you're talking about with the royalty rates, that is the problem because it's now so low a cost and a revenue source for artists. This is why concert tickets are now £300, £500, £700. You know, naming no names, but I'm a big fan of Robert Smith, who complained about the fact that artists are now selling tickets, you know, £1,000 for a VIP ticket, $1,500. The reason they're doing that is
and there's a mix of the insurance of a venue.
There is, but you know, I'm from the era where we paid 25 quid to go to see a big band at an arena. You could argue that inflation is nowhere near to the point where it's 25 quid to 15.
Yes.
So artists are shoring up the loss of earnings that they used to make from selling CD and vinyl and DVDs and tapes into merch and ticketing. Yeah. And that's great, but not so great for fans because instead of just casually going along with 20,000 other people watching a band, you're now getting, you know, seriously scalped for the amount of ticket money and things because of the dissolution of the value of music to zero.
With what you're doing with your software, you're embedding it at the source.
Yes.
Right. So if it is created with a music file that goes onto vinyl, CD, if you still get a CD, tape, that file still can't be removed in that.
Yeah, so there's a form of embedding called psychoacoustic masking. And what happens is the noise floor of vinyl and tape has got a certain amount of hiss, a certain amount of
rumble, course,
right? Yeah. When you're into a pure play format like WAV or FLAC, and things like that,
it's uncompressed.
Uncompressed, and it's lovely and crystallized. Yeah. But there is now this technique that we're talking about doesn't work on pure silence. Right. Because the little markers themselves have to be attached to the waveforms of the audio in such a way that they're not audible to the person listening, they're embedded above the noise floor. Yes. So they do work across media like vinyl and tapes. It's not indestructible. We're not suggesting this is once and forever and it's indestructible. What we're saying is, at the point of consumption where a distributor takes a file and puts it into the system of the kosher distribution network, not assuming any bad actors, teenagers in bedrooms or disaffected Russian dissidents going, oh, I'm going to hack your music. No, we're assuming that there's a purity between where you've made your music and the pipeline with which you send it up to distribution. And as a result of that, we don't have to be resilient to all of the attacks of speeding up and slowing down and reharmonizing and re-EQing. We're saying that by the simple act of putting provenance in, all of the 2 billion nonsense tracks of deepfakes gone, because those are not signed by anybody who pretends to be a human. And to the other right-hand side of the coin, all of the unattributed music that's not being paid royalties to, which currently sits about $1 billion worth of unpaid royalties, easily, just in the US alone. We're also hopefully coming up with a reasonable solution where we can match those things up, because instead of the identity being separated from the piece of music, it's woven into the fabric of the track.
I remember from the old days of copying DVDs.
Allegedly.
Teenagers, the statute of limitation has gone now at the stage with my age. But it used to have a bit of a pulse. Yeah. So the quality of the picture would decrease and the audio would decrease.
Yeah.
would that be a sort of similar thing with what you're doing?
So what you're referring to is Digimark used to embed watermarks into DVDs when you were allegedly not copying them. So they're a patent holder and they're a massive company. Now, what we're recognising is that at the moment, all the big beasts, Microsoft, Adobe, Google, Meta, to name a few, they're all looking at the similar problem area because they're trying to embed watermarking into their own visual, audio, video, and sonic outputs. And that's interesting. But that's also a form of capture, because the trouble is when large technology companies come in and self-regulate, it means that we have to rely on the veracity of their claims to justify payments. So the difference with the foundation of Genotech is we are literally making a foundation and we're saying, right, I'm a Clever Clogs and I've applied for 2 patents. Right. One is a patent for embedding the watermark, but the second part of it is cryptographically securing that embedding. Yes. So unless you have the key, you can't even unlock the signal to understand what the signal says. Yeah.
Does that signal go through the whole song?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
And what we've decided is instead of trying to embed all the data about the data, the metadata, we're just going to put a very simple short form signature in there, which is like a long, like the thing on your passport, that kind of length. Because that is the least amount of data we can embed to stop any perturbations in the audio quality. Right? And we scatter write that across the file. Interestingly, if you snip the file, I'm
trying to think of like all the.
So exactly, if you scatter write, well, I'm glad you are, because you scatter write across the file, we can use the same forensic software that's used to recover DNA from dead bodies to basically reattribute and rebuild the original marker and make a second guess as to what it was going to be. Right. So it's interesting. We're literally fighting fire with fire, but we're also embedding DNA technology into the embedding of the signal.
That's incredible. Now,
I am quite old, and if I don't get it right now, I don't know if I'll manage the next 20 years.
Like you mentioned some of the big guns there, but is there many competitors trying to do what you guys are doing?
Well, not really, because what's interesting is, this is quite granular. I hope your viewers are keeping up. But the majority of work at the moment that's being done to identify original music is being done in a way that's called post hoc. And post hoc fingerprinting is what they're doing. They're using probabilistic maths to say it's 5% Beatles, 3% Elton John, 15% ABBA, 16% the Pixies. And they're trying to do that after the effect. So they're trying to say, okay, you've chucked all the ingredients in the cauldron, you've given it a good old stir, it turned to sludge. Now we're going to try and take the sludge and filter and go, what was originally in this, right? That's quite difficult. And also from a legal perspective, very difficult to ascertain if you could say, this is a copyright claim, right? Yeah. So what we're saying is that's really hard. Why not? It's before the murder victim is murdered, just don't let the murderer into the building. Yeah. So
don't give them the tools.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're saying embed the provenance first, check what goes into the system before it gets gorged into whatever's been connected, because that's an easier solution than trying to figure out what's happened after the event. So nobody is specifically doing that. And what's interesting is we're also proposing that instead of it being owned by any individual organisation, we're turning it into a not-for-profit foundation similar to Mozilla, W3C, and saying, okay, it will never be bought, your ID will never be bought and sold. We're not going to sell it to Universal Music or Spotify, really. So what we've decided is you're not going to be able to buy and sell the standard. I'm never going to rent you your ID. Right. It's not just turning into a new gatekeeping exercise. What we will do is we'll create a foundation, we're already in the process of doing that, that's holding the technical standard. So similar to Linux, Mozilla, W3C. Yes. And as a result, that'll be for artists on behalf of artists. And it won't be part of a technical capture by the technology companies who want to self-regulate. It won't also be part of the major record labels who also want to self-regulate. Yes. Because the major companies, and also a bit like Spotify, they find it very difficult to justify the amount of forensic work needed to be done on music that's only sold maybe £1,000 of license. So a bunch of stuff you might have realised from Spotify has been demonetised, basically deplatformed. Until you've had a certain number of plays, they're not going to bother even accounting.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
So what we're saying is,
and that's a real.
It is because if you're an artist, and like we all have day jobs and side hustles and stuff we are doing. If you're already struggling to say, okay, by day I'm this and by night I'm a musician and a job in creating. What you're saying is, well, for the sake of 250 quid or 500 quid or £1,000, that's a reasonable sum of money for some people. It would help them upgrade their equipment or give them a bit more.
Especially if you're, not every artist is going to be the Beatles or Oasis and stuff like that, and they're trying to get out onto the market.
Exactly.
And this is where your tool is going to get very interesting. Now, you do have an amazing, unique selling point. How do you get out into the market with this and get people to buy into what you're trying to do?
Another great question. So, because I'm a man of a certain age, I know certain individuals in the music industry and also women and men of a certain age. And what we realised is that in the UK, so Dublin's interesting because Dublin's sitting within the EU, right? Someone like Sol in Brussels about 4 or 5 years ago said, we need an AI Act. So starting August this year, the EU AI Act is coming into power, and there's Articles 50 and 51 that say if you are going to sell generative AI music services, you need to prove to us that the data that's been trained on has been licensed.
Right.
Otherwise, we're going to fine you.
Right.
It's good.
Which is a great line.
Amazing.
That, yes.
Legislative, stick rather than carrot. Now, interestingly, the UK is sitting on the fence because it's having problems with the argument between whether artists should opt in by default or opt out by default for their music and artistic work being trained on. So there's a big hullabaloo about that. So one of the interesting things is to engage with the right community of practice, you have to get to those artists who want to engage in this kind of thing. Right? So the majors are already doing a thing where all of their artists in the majors are opting in. And Universal is creating what they're calling a walled garden. And they've just announced with Spotify, you're going to be able to create cover versions, multiple versions of songs, because Universal have licensed their content to Spotify to create multiple remixes. So
that will be a lot of artists pulling out.
Yeah, and I think it's causing a bit of discontent because I think people aren't necessarily saying, by default I should be allowed to be mimicked. Because the trouble is, you see, once you've created the pattern language of an artist, once I've recorded your voice print, once I've created a model of
which is only maybe 200 words now, and sometimes.
And if I create a model that's trained on your musical work and your musical creative footprint, it's all right saying, well, if you decide you don't want to be involved, then we'll just take it out. But that's very difficult because the system has learned. The system has already learned.
Yeah.
So so what we're trying to suggest is, listen, we might already be too late in the sense that the horse has bolted, and over the last 3 or 4 years, all of the music in the world has been scraped and turned into models, right? That's difficult because that infers that, and if you look at what's gone on with some of the major artists, they've all cashed out. 300 million here, 400 million there. The Pink Floyd have just done, however many hundreds of millions of selling. Some people are just literally saying, we're selling the farm. We're no longer in the game. Yes. David Bowie even, the estate has done the final deal with Warner's for 230 million, I think it was, and that's the end of that. His family no longer own the estate and manage it. It's sold forever. Yes. Right? Done deal. What we might be then is in an era there whereby we say, okay, up until now, it's going to be hard to prove that certain things have fed into this. What we should do, though, is try and from this point on say, right, it's a no-brainer.
Yes.
This is why we're trying to turn it into a standard. When you've got your digital workstation, at the point of creation of your piece of music, when you're mastering the file, you inject your geotone. And from that point on, it goes into the system, embedded, done.
Yes.
The way you create critical mass for that is we've got these 3 organisations, the Featured Artists Coalition, the Music Managers Forum, and the Association for Electronic Music, 3 good old-fashioned medieval guilds applied to the modern era. Yes. They cover 30,000 independent artists.
Wow.
So what we're saying is, right, we're going to create Genotone VST, which is a virtual studio technology plugin, which is interoperable across all the different workstations. That's going to do the callback to the Genotone server that's going to issue you an ID. Mm-hmm. You're going to embed your ID, courtesy of the VST plugin, and then your music is going to be distributed. The ID that you created is then going to be read at the point of distribution by the people distributing it to make sure you are you and you have permission to release this forward.
So on a monetization area, now creating a standard, absolutely, but for you with Genotone, I guess then you approach the artist and say, to get this as a license for your music,
Yes.
that's your fees.
Yeah, well, no, because what we decided was we had to make the onboarding free. So we'll make the Genotone system free, so we're not renting out, because that immediately creates friction, because artists are saying, well, it's okay for rich artists, but not for poor artists, etc. So we're trying to make that as frictionless as possible with an onboarding that creates a cryptographically bound identity with your marker. And then what we're saying is, well, that can just go into the system, fine. We're not going to charge you anything for that.
Right.
The way the Genotone wants to work is that we're setting up a charitable foundation which can take donations, it can take government grants, it can take R&D research grants, and that's what pumps and keeps the tech up to date. And then on the other side, there's going to be a limited company, which is like a service layer, that's going to say, right, if you do that one shot, it's fine, but if you need a dashboard, say you've got 500 songs out and you're a label, or you've got an archive, we'll give you some tools that will run as a commercial software license. We'll charge you 20 quid a month or 50 quid a month. Similar SaaS model, right? And that's just going to allow you to do granular research into where is your stuff, what is it doing, how much you owe. And we feel that that's quite a reasonable model.
But Andy, like in the time that we've done this podcast, like I have thrown some open questions, and to our audience that can be very tech geeky and the less tech geeky. You really explained it really well to me here. Where can people find out more on it then?
We've got a website, genotone.com. You can also just leave your name there. I mean, we're currently raising seed round. I'm having to tap dance and juggle and do all the usual stuff as a founder. We're raising some funding. We've got a bunch of friends in the production community, the mastering community. We've got friends in the music business. We're also looking at policy, legislation. So there's a lot of stuff to do. But from regards to your online audience, they can go to genotone.com and register and send me their details. There's also some sandbox trials we want to launch in the autumn, where if anybody wants to be involved, I'd be happy to talk to them if they want to try and embed it into their own music and workflow.
Right.
And beyond that, you can hit me up. I'm pretty easy to get hold of,
Yes, a very interesting project, Genotone there, and thanks to all the guys at the Dublin Tech Summit for inviting me along as media to partake in it, and some great startups at the Dublin Tech Summit as well. Have a look at this.
Day one on the main stage starts right now, my friends. We are going to kick off with a session called Can Data Spot a Leader Before You Can? Well, the answer, as I think many of you will suspect, is indeed yes. And last week at the Work Human Forum in London, I learned this from one of our next speakers. Now, he is the recipient last night at a very special evening of the Dublin Tech Summit Visionary Award. Now, he picked up this award last night, and he's also the founder and CEO of an amazing company called Work Human, because without the human, it's just work, and you're going to learn so much more about the future of work from this next guest. He is the founder and CEO of Work Human, Eric Mosley, and he's going to be in conversation with a dear friend of the Dublin Tech Summit, Business Post Technology and Innovation Editor, Charlie Taylor. So I appreciate it. It's first thing in the morning, but we need you to bring your A game all day, every minute of every day, right here in the Dublin Tech Summit. So we would like a huge round of applause as we give it up for Eric Mosley and Charlie Taylor. Thank you.
And so we trained a model, our Ascend model. Basically, we have like 1 billion moments of gratitude with rich data and information density.
And obviously going back many years,
and going back 20 years. Yeah. And we've worked with some customers for literally 20 years. So the data that we have in those companies literally has described everything that's happened in those companies for 20 years. So that's enormously rich data. So what the Ascend model does is, the first thing it does is it creates a taxonomy of behaviors and work for each specific company. So basically it's like, we call it a leadership genome, and it's basically how work gets done in the company. And if you look at it, it's an incredible matrix of behaviors and attributes of people and work information. And it maps how work gets done across the whole organization and how people work together and what the people do. And once it has that, it can then look at that for the most senior people, like the VPs in the organisation, and then it can look at what patterns they have, and then it can compare that to people lower down in the organisation. And if some people lower down in the organisation have a similar pattern of that kind of taxonomy of behaviours, then it's probably indicative that they have leadership potential.
For us at OpenAI, we have 3 billion chats a day, over 900 million weekly active users, over 4 million using codecs, over 4 million business users, over 9 million developers. Okay, so what does that tell you?
Good to remember all those numbers, friends.
What's that tell you though, Charlie, is that this isn't just about using a product. This is a practice. So this is about Ireland being at the position where we can take it from, using it, but actually into an operating layer. And so when you take it, then you're moving into this golden age of entrepreneurship, as I mentioned. So even if I take examples of, Deciphex, helping to deal with the massive shortage of pathologists, the decision making there that they're creating, the reduction of the waiting list that they have, this is real stuff, times in terms of their agents. And this isn't just about the big players either, it's about the smaller ones. It's about the SMEs, the backbone of this economy. 95% of them. I often give the example of Benihans Hardware, a 160-year-old fifth generation family, a hardware store just a few roads away, and they are transforming their business and their customer success. So I think taking all of that together, you take the talent, you take our positioning, you take our culture, you take our mindset, you look at our way of thinking when it comes to entrepreneurship, and we have that naturally.
Them all talking about AI and the future of AI. I could have sat all day listening to some of the keynote speeches, but I had interviews to record, and it was a busy time. Now, the World Cup 2026 has started, and we're going to break down the silicon sensors and software powering the World Cup, spanning 104 matches across the United States, Canada and Mexico. This year's tournament is an absolute logistical and technological marvel. Today we're zoning in on two crucial elements that are fundamentally challenging how we experience the beautiful game, the massive broadcast infrastructure and the highly advanced computer chip hidden inside the football itself. Yes, so let's kick off with the broadcast. That was a terrible pun. Yeah, terrible pun. Kick off with the broadcast. Oh my God. Someone should sack the producer of this program. They really should. Okay, enough laughter. To understand the sheer scale of what the host broadcast services, or HBS, is doing for the World Cup, you have to look at the baseline camera plan. For every single match, there is a baseline of 45 cameras around the pitch. That's 45 cameras around the pitch. But this isn't your standard wide-angle broadcast field. Producers are treating the camera plan as a content document. This means alongside traditional broadcast cameras, they are integrating pole cams, cable cams, 360-degree cameras and cine-style cameras. Those cine-style cameras are incredible for capturing the fan moments and tunnel sequences with beautiful, cinematic, shallow depth of field. They're even incorporating digital-first devices, meaning iPhones could be used to capture diverse content directly for the World Cup broadcast. While the standard feed of broadcast is a stunning 4K HDR, the premium broadcast package steps up to 8K cameras and Dolby Atmos spatial audio. This spatial audio allows you to literally isolate the sound of the ball kick, the referee's whistle, and even have the raw stadium noise. Speaking of the referee, let's talk about the ref cam. The ref cam, for 104 matches, referees are equipped with a tiny 14-gram camera mounted right on them. Because referees are constantly running, tech giant Lenovo has provided AI stabilization software to smooth out the shaky footage, turning it into an incredible storytelling tool. Interestingly, the camera doesn't use the main broadcast network. It transmits its footage using purpose-built private 5G network deployed by Verizon across 16 venues. So where does all these standard and ref cam feeds go? All that data travels over Verizon's broadcast contribution network, which carries a mind-blowing 7 terabits per second. 7 terabits per second of data capacity, straight back to the centralized International Broadcast Center in Dallas, Texas. This 484,000 square foot facility is an absolute nerve center where centralized replay, shading and graphics are all handled under one roof. And to ensure the content reaches younger audiences, DAZN has hired 48 digital creators to produce social-first content, and FIFA has partnered with YouTube to allow media partners to stream the first 10 minutes of every match right on the social media platform. Now, let's move from the cameras pointing at the pitch to the most important piece of technology on the pitch, which is the football. The official match ball is called Trionda. It features a unique 4-panel construction with symbols honouring the 3 host nations, the maple leaf for Canada, an eagle for Mexico, and a star for the United States. But here on All Things Techie, we care about what's inside the ball. And I don't mean it's just air. Hidden inside the football is a state-of-the-art 500Hz motion sensor chip. Yes, this football is a smart device. It literally needs to be plugged in and you charge it before every single game. If you stick a battery and chip inside a football, won't the players notice? Adidas engineers have placed chip right beside on the side of a bladder, perfectly counterbalanced opposite the air valve. They tested it using a robotic leg that can shoot harder than any human possibly could. The result? And blind testing, no player has able to be systematically detect a difference between a connected ball and a regular one. So, listeners and viewers, why do they need a smart ball in the World Cup? It comes down to officiating. The sensor timestamps every single touch and transmits a precise data 500 times a second. The ball data is combined with 10 to 14 semi-automatic offside technology or SAOT cameras positioned around the stadium. These cameras track 29 skeletal data points on every single player to build an exact real-time 3D model of the field. Are you still with me? That's a lot of tech. This year, FIFA took things to next level. They scanned all 1,248 players in the tournament using an AI-enabled chamber that takes just 1 second per player. These scans create lifelike digital avatars that are used to generate incredibly clear 3D animations for broadcast and video assistant referee, or VAR. This combination of the smart ball and the 3D cameras is drastically speeding up the game. Is it really though? Hold on. Are you saying that all these cameras and VAR is speeding up the game? It's actually slowing it down for any supporter, and we know it because they go off and they check the VAR and it slows up the game. But answers on a postcard while you're watching the World Cup. In the past, referees spent minutes squinting at monitors to determine offsides. Now, offside threshold has been reduced from 50 centimetres down to a razor-thin 10 centimetres. If an attacker is caught offside, the system instantly sends a real-time audio alert whispering offside, offside, offside directly into the assistant referee's earpiece. This means that the frustrating delayed offside flag could finally become a thing of the past. No, it won't. It really won't. Furthermore, the chip inside the Trionda ball can determine exactly which player touched the ball last. This gives VAR the power to quickly and accurately rule on corner kicks and out-of-bound plays. FIFA has introduced a new line-of-sight technology, giving referees 2 virtual feeds that perfectly replicate the goalkeeper's perspectives to see if their vision was blocked. From 45 cameras per match, beaming 7 terabytes of data, to a football that you have to charge like a smartphone, the 2026 World Cup is proving that data and AI have fundamentally changed the beautiful game forever. Now, Now, before we get into our interview with Peter Shure from Shure, we're going to say what happened at Apple's latest Worldwide Developers Conference, or the WWDC 2026. You know, there's a lot to unpack. We're talking about massive software redesigns and highly anticipated Siri AI that half our audience won't even get to use at launch, and crucial life-saving updates to child safety features. But as we'll see today, while Apple was busy taking a bow at Cupertino, the UK government was busy drawing a line in the sand in London. What am I talking about? First off, let's talk about the aesthetics. Apple has introduced what they're calling the broadest software design update ever. Across iOS 26, iPad OS 26, Mac OS, Tahoe 26, watchOS 26 and tvOS 26. Apple is rolling out an entirely new material design called liquid glass. Apple's VP of Human Interface Design, Alan Dye, says that this translucent material combines the optical qualities of real glass with fluidity that only Apple can achieve. It dynamically adapts between light and dark environments, reflecting and refracting its surroundings in real time. If you're a Mac user, like I am, Mac OS Tahoe 26 is going to let you completely customize your desktop and dock with these new liquid glass widgets coming to life in colourful new light, dark and clear tints. Plus they're adding a completely transparent menu bar to make your Mac display feel even larger. It sounds beautiful, but let's be honest, you aren't just buying Apple for the glossy buttons. You want the smarts, and that brings us to our next segment. If you live in the European Union, brace yourself for some bad news. Apple's incredibly hyped new AI interface called Siri AI will not be available to the EU users on iPhones, iPads or on Apple Watches when iOS 27 comes out. And you might ask, why is it not coming out and why is it not available, listeners? And Apple is blaming the EU's Digital Markets Act, or the DMA. Apple claims that the EU's extreme interpretation of the DMA would require them to give rival virtual assistants direct access to users' private data and device control. Because they say this compromises privacy and security, Apple is simply pulled the plug on the launch of these devices in Europe. The small silver lining here that if you see Mac or the Vision Pro headset, you'll still get Siri AI on Mac OS 27 and Vision OS 27. But for mobile users, Apple say they currently have no timeline for when Siri AI will hit the EU market. While they are fighting with the EU over AI, Apple is actively working with the UK police on physical security. The Metropolitan Police in London have been urging tech giants to essentially make stolen phones completely unusable. Phone snatching is a massive issue, with illicit software being used to factory set stolen phones so they can ship from foreign markets like China and sold as new. Apple seems to have cracked the engineering problem recently with iOS 26.4 update. Apple turned a setting called Stolen Device Protection on by default. Now if a thief tries to change a critical security information like passwords while the phone is away from the familiar location like your home or work, the system forces a time delay. This gives victims the time to mark their device as lost and effectively bricks the phone, making it worthless to the thief. Sir Mark Rowley, the Met Police Commissioner, noted that if phones cannot be reactivated, their value collapses, directly removing the incentive to steal them. Now, let's move on to the important part of today's show on Apple's latest releases, and that is about child safety. At the WWDC 26, Apple announced a major package of new child safety features coming into iOS 27. This is something every parent listening and viewing this podcast needs to pay attention to. Here's what Apple is rolling out. First, it's called Ask to Browse. This will require children to actively request parental approval before they can visit websites in the Safari browser. This is huge because it creates a moment of pause and friction that current parental controls often lack. Second, they are redesigning screen time. So instead of parents having to guess what limits to set, Apple is introducing age-based daily limit recommendations developed alongside the actual child development experts. Finally, they are expanding communication safely. Currently, this feature uses on-device machine learning to blur nude images before a child sends or receives them on Apple's native Messages app or AirDrop. It also warns that it also warns the child and offers them ways to get help. Now, this system is being expanded to detect blur graphic violence as well. So these are meaningful additions. Apple is genuinely taking the steps to protect kids. But here is a massive gap, and the UK government has just spotted it. Just hours after Apple's WWDC presentation in California, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer took to the stage at London Tech Week, and he didn't hand out compliments to Apple. He handed out a very serious ultimatum to both Apple and to Google. Starmer gave Apple and Google exactly 3 months to introduce device-level controls that block children from taking, sending or receiving nude images, and that means across all apps at the operating system level. If they fail to do this, the UK government will introduce legislation forcing them to comply, which could include massive fines to both companies, Apple and Google, or as last resort, criminal liability for tech executives. Let's break down why the Prime Minister is so angry. Remember that Apple's brilliant communication safety feature we just talked about, it only works inside Apple's own apps like iMessage, or if a teenager on an iPhone is coerced into sending nude pictures or images on Snapchat, WhatsApp or Instagram, Apple's safety features are completely bypassed. It is outside of their apps, and that is fair enough. They're trying to make their phones and operating system safe along with their browser like Safari, but they have limited control over other apps. And the statistics are horrifying. 91% of child sexual abuse reports recorded in 2024 contained self-generated content from the children themselves. Criminal networks like target teenagers, coerce them into sending image, and then the image to blackmail them, a process called sextortion. This entire pipeline runs through third-party messaging apps that currently sit outside Apple and Google's protective bubble. The government argues that the technology to fix this already exists. They point to a UK safety firm called Safe2Net, which has developed an AI tool that blocks nude content at the device level without the data ever leaving the phone. So, Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, demand is simple. Make the smartphone a safe environment by default. If a child tries to open the camera to take a nude image, the device itself should stop it, regardless of whether a social media site or an app is open. But this ultimatum has sparked massive war over privacy. How do you block children from taking these images without accidentally treating adults like children? The UK government plan says that adults over 18 will still be able to take, share or view nude content, but only if they complete the online age verification process. The Labour government is effectively threatening ID checks on the internet, and is people anonymous anymore online? No, they won't be if they're doing these ID checks. The private messaging app Signal also pushed back hard, arguing that it promises of an on-device scanning are cold comfort. They worry that once a government forces a tech company to scan for nudity today, they could easily demand the scanning of a political speech tomorrow. We have seen this movie before. Back in 2021, Apple announced a plan to scan devices for known child sex abuse material, but they quietly shelved it after massive backlash from privacy advocates. Now Apple and Google are stuck between a rock and a hard place. On one side, they face UK laws that could literally hold their executives criminally liable if they don't implement the device-wide scanning by September. On the other hand, they face privacy nightmare from their own users. Google did respond too by saying they are working constructively with the UK to find a privacy-preserving solutions. Apple so far has not officially commented on the ultimatum. So what should you do right now if you are a parent? Don't wait for the tech giants and the government to figure out the law. First, when iOS 27 arrives, set up the Ask to Browse feature. Second, go to your iPhone settings right now under the screen time and ensure communication safely is turned on for your child's account. It only may cover Apple messages, but it's better than nothing. And most importantly, talk to your kids about course sharing and sectortion. Let them know if an image ends up somewhere unintended, they will not be punished for coming to you for help. That conversation is more protective than any piece of software Apple or Google could ever invent. So what do you think? Should tech companies be forced to scan your phone's camera to protect kids? Or is it a step too far personally? Let us know in the comments. You can get in touch with the All Things TechIE podcast. Where is the screen that I want? You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, X, TikTok, YouTube, and on my official website, sirjustindawson.com, and the All Things TechIE podcast at www.allthingstech.ie. Coming up, we have an interview with Peter Herr from Shure, talking about everything that's coming up at Infocom at their trade show booth. Peter, thank you so much for joining us on the All Things Techie podcast. It's been a while. I think the last time we were talking was over at IBC at the end of last year. I laughed that I bumped into Chris Meredith while I was over at IBC, and he was like, "We're not bringing out a video bar," and I was like, "Yes, you are. I'm sure you're bringing out a video bar. In fact, I was in Switzerland when I signed NDA agreements 2.5 years ago saying that you're bringing out a video bar. And I think Chris forgot that I was over with the team at the Montreux Jazz Festival where I seen design. At the time when that was announced, I remember saying to Chris and Eric and probably yourself up overlooking the Swiss Alps and the lakes, so going, really? Another video bar? Is that a good thing? But my God, have you really blown everyone out of the market? That's 2.5 years of planning, product and development to come out.
Yep.
And I did play with it at ISE, and I guess for Infocom, this is the first time the Americans will get a hand on
this is the first one stateside. This will be it. The Infocom in Vegas is going to be the first time that we show the IntelliMix Bar Pro to folks here in the US, and we're super excited. I think the momentum is continuing from ISE. The response at ISE was off the charts. It was very, very encouraging. Obviously people knew, we were probably working on something, like you said, right? But the response has been incredible, not only to the audio, obviously, but the video performance is also incredible with that bar. The framing, the IntelliFrame type of positioning for large meeting spaces, it just does a killer job of really making a meeting effortless and kind of almost the technology just kind of takes care of itself. It's an amazing piece of equipment, and we're super excited about it.
Now, to remind our listeners and our viewers on the IntelliMix bar, like this is 4K cameras in one bar. And, Shure has been known for the past 100 years plus to know how to do audio. You've really packed this thing full with microphones.
Right. Yeah, we wouldn't have done it any other way for our first all-in-one bar. The array, the microphone in particular is basically a very similar type of architecture to something from our Microflex Advance array microphone series, of which we launched a couple of new models just last week, actually at the beginning of June. But yeah, that features the Bar Pro includes a linear array microphone that has incredible pickup, not only from a localization perspective, but also just for a large room, for like someone at the very end of a 30-foot table. Has no problem capturing audio from everywhere within the room, but really cleanly and consistently. And like you mentioned, those cameras, the location of those cameras is particularly interesting with the Bar Pro. It's got the center cameras, which a lot of bars do in the market have, but we also have two on the outside, one on each of the outside edges to get those cross table and perspective shots. And really, allow that framing to happen in a seamless way. So it's really unique, does an amazing job of kind of grabbing the entire room, but also focusing on individual participants if needed.
Now, underneath the hood or behind the cam and the bar, like there is so much room for expansion that you have going on there. Like you have pretty much put a network switch in the back of this bar.
Yeah, essentially it is. It is there. Yeah, there's a full-on PoE network switch in the back, and that's something that we're excited about and able to, to do when the time comes. There will be expansion opportunities with our ecosystem of Microflex array products to expand the coverage of the microphones. So yeah, there's a lot of room for growth using the Bar Pro as kind of a hub.
Yeah, well, people think audio. As soon as I looked at the back of that, I was thinking, like this is where I go into the what's Shure working on next. Of course, the audio, like that's your bread and butter. But I always think of the rooms that are weirdly shaped that you might be able to add an extra camera eventually to this bar.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely in the thought process, and that's why we made the connections that we did on the back of the bar. I don't have any kind of like secret information for you right now in terms of our entrance into a separate type of camera scenario. The cameras that are built in are what's kind of it's designed to work with. But obviously, watch this space. We always have things that we're working on.
It is dependent on two major factors usually, which is Microsoft Rooms and MS Team Rooms, and also with Zoom. As of last week, you got Zoom certified with this bar, which gives cross-platform collaborations.
Yeah, well, the bar Pro hasn't been Zoom. There isn't a Zoom version of it yet. Right. That is in the works. What we actually did just launch for Zoom are versions of our IntelliMix room kits.
Okay. Yes.
Which are the component-based system that kind of sets itself up. You connect all the cables, it auto routes, auto configures. We introduced the IntelliMix room kits for Teams last year, and this year at Infocom we're launching the Zoom versions. And we also have our foundation system, which is just the touch panel and the compute. But again, the core of it is that we're able to kind of speak both languages, if you will, right? Teams rooms, Zoom rooms, obviously by far the largest share of the codecs, at least in most of the world. So to have both those platforms kind of covered with some of our core systems is super important.
Now, at IBC, you did come out with the sports tile that is taking over stadiums.
The DCA 901, yeah,
exactly.
Sure.
Now, how with USA, Canada, and Mexico doing the World Cup, has Shure teamed up with the World Cup? Are we going to see?
That's a good question. I don't know that I can answer that. I would assume that there's probably some level of a relationship there. But as for if the DCA 901 is going to be on the pitch or on the field, you'll have to probably tune in and see, because that would be news to me as well. I don't really know. I know it's certainly designed for places like that and those types of high stakes environments. But I don't know if there's a specific partnership between us. But it's definitely gaining ground, and the market is super excited about that product.
Yeah, like when I first seen it, my first thought, and I think we even had this conversation off mic at IBC. It's like, have you just taken the ceiling tile and turned it on the side? And you were like, oh, Justin, no. A lot more to it than that. And it does come down to that research and development of your software that is really pushing things with your lobes in these scenarios that it is detecting so fast in all these type of, whether it be ice hockey, whether it be baseball, whether it be American football. Like someone might say, and especially working in your team, is it just making the software run faster in the background?
I think that's part of it. I think that's part of it. Yeah, I think it's been we've had 10 years of array microphone products in the market, right? We introduced our MXA 910 ceiling array and the MXA 310 table array back in 2016. So, and before that, we were working on things even earlier than that. Like I remember doing like early tests with things and, having certain customers and partners of ours come in to kind of hear what we were working on at the time back in like 2012. So it's been a long road, right? But obviously in that same amount of time, I mean, we're living through it right now, right? Just the growth of AI and the chipsets that are able to run that stuff are incredibly advanced and so much more powerful than they were, even 5 years ago, right? Split the time in half. So that's what we've kind of been able to do, is really increase the headroom, the chipset on these microphones to be, even faster and able to process the beamforming, at a, 10 times or 10x what we were able to do, probably even more. Honestly, I'm not an engineer, but I know that the technology platform on which they're building kind of the next generation of our array technology is gone, is leaps and bounds. It's ridiculous.
Now, talk to me about your labs, because I've been Phil Waterhouse was good enough to let me see the Shure Experience Centre in London. What a building that is! Like a fantastic overlooking bank in London. Musicians coming in all the time to your Experience Centre. You have your podcast studio, which I have to take advantage of at some stage in the future.
Happen.
Yeah, we will make that happen. But as for lab, I always think when you have your research and development team and you're over in America, like I've seen some of your competitors even set up things, whether it be at IBC, whether it be over at Infocom, and they're using decent quality hotel rooms that have decent acoustics. And I always think if you want to test something like this, put it in the most crappiest room that you can find in a hotel to show
100%.
off. So on that basis, like, have you got really poorly sound absorbed rooms in your product testing environment over?
What's ironic, actually, Justin, is our corporate headquarters here in Niles that I'm sitting in right now has some very challenging rooms. It has a lot of glass, a lot of steel, a lot of hard concrete. And some of the rooms are like incredibly awful from an audio perspective, especially for an audio company. That's what's so funny. But we've treated some of them appropriately to make sure that they sound better. But also we have the technology to we have products that will take care of that for it. So you don't need to necessarily spend a ton of extra money or time deploying sound deadening materials to take the reverb out of a room or the echo out of a space.
I always say
that stuff is built into the products itself, which is great.
I always say if you want to test something properly, just give it to a load of higher ed institutions.
Oh, for sure. Don't put it through the paces, right?
We have a couple of rooms that aren't sound absorbed, just a couple. With that and your ceiling tiles, you are now going down the route of putting AI into it.
Yes.
So this is a bit of a game changer, and some tests and unveilings at Infocom in the next week or so.
Yes, we're super excited. That's with our new flagship. So the MXA 925, which was announced just last week on June 4th, we announced it. And that is we actually previewed it at ISE in the Innovation Lab where I saw you last in February. But we've got 3 technologies that we've brought into the 925, which are on board the microphone itself, that are AI enabled. It's our AI acoustic echo cancellation, our AI deverb, which is like a de-reverberization type of algorithm, and then our denoiser algorithm. All are AI enabled and trained in our labs ahead of time. So they kind of have thousands upon thousands of scenarios built into the microphone to understand, difficult situations, whether it's echo or noise or bad like acoustics, it's got algorithms built in and leveraging that AI technology to basically squash those issues. And, there's no convergence time with the AEC now. It is completely 100%, like it locks in to the echo and gets rid of it instantly. There's no convergence time. And it's just tremendous. It's actually amazing to kind of hear from the far end and hear, understand that what you're hearing is like truly just completely crystal clear audio with zero effort.
Yeah. Now, going forward, like you've done so much stuff with the likes of content creators like myself, with the motion mix and the move mics, and between having one that now connects directly to your mobile phone, USB-C as standard, to your little Move Mic 88, and then your clip-on mics. You do one thing I've always said, and not as a negative feedback, but a constructive feedback, is there's a hell of a lot of apps on the Shure site, and I guess with the power of AI and also redesigning that, it might all start coming together.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that's kind of kind of a thought process from a standpoint of just a workflow perspective.
Yes.
So you're not having to kind of flip from app to app based on what device you're using. So some streamlining is definitely in the cards. I would totally agree, and I think it just makes sense. Again, to make sure that professionals like yourselves and other content creators that are always kind of using our hardware, which we're obviously super proud of, but we want that user experience to go all the way through to the software and have it be streamlined as possible.
But you're making things that are compact, ready to go, because even the idea that you had with now you're going to have to remind me of the model number, but your latest microphone, where you can actually have an amp built in, so you can connect two microphones together.
Yes. Yeah, it's that. You mean the two input USB mic that has the microphone? Yeah, I think it's the. Man, it's though I don't work on those products, so I'm not exactly as. It's an MV7 derivative. I think it's the MV7 Plus.
Yes, that's it. Yes.
Maybe it's the MV7i is what I'm thinking. Because I think I is for interface. It allows you to obviously use. Well, you've got the MV7i.
Yes.
That's right in front of you.
And Phil in the past has turned around to me. It's like, why don't you update this? It's like, because it's custom colored to my podcast. Why would I want to update?
I love that color. I love that color. It's perfect. No, yeah, the MV7i is the one that has the interface on the back, which is another input for like an interview type of situation. So you could literally have one microphone that's kind of the USB that gets you into the computer, but then the other microphone can just be any analog, XLR based type of microphone, whether it's a 58 or something else, plugs right in and you're good to go.
With Shure going over the 100th year centenary mark, now I know your biggest competitor will go, well, we've put microphones in space, but I've heard
we put microphones in space too.
That's a nice comeback, But where do you see the future going with microphone technology with Shure?
I think we're kind of seeing evidence of it now, which you already kind of referred to, at least on the array microphone side, seeing what normally, or what starting in 2016 was more geared at the conference room, to now see it in like sports stadiums and being used in that kind of those kind of arenas for audio capture of whether it's kicking a ball or hitting a baseball or whatever. I just think that kind of shows where audio is everywhere, right? And capturing it is so critical to like the human experience and understanding and hearing where you're at and listening to everything. And a high quality audio experience is something that just like you can't do good enough a job of capturing, right? So we're trying to figure out all the possible ways to do that, whether it's in a conference room, on the baseball field, out in the jungle with one of our move mics or remote mics type of thing to capture in a nature type of environment. High quality audio capture is just part of our DNA, and I don't really see that going away anytime soon.
No, and me neither. But I think where the future lies is, and you could see a bit of it from IBC and what's coming out in the broadcasting arenas, as you're mentioning. But
yeah,
the other area that I have a fascination in, because, and a vivid interest in, because of my son, is accessibility. And as
for
soon
sure.
as Auracast comes out, now this is not and it's quite clear to put out to our listeners and viewers, this isn't down to Shure or your competitors like Sennheiser and so forth. It's down to the Bluetooth technology. And when mobile phone companies, whether you're Android or Apple, when they start buying into this Bluetooth technology that will allow people to use their own headphones and devices to be able to do it. Because I say in the next 3 to 5 years, we will not have T-loops anymore, and we will be able to listen to stadiums and concerts with our own headphones in our own environments.
For sure.
And Dante is becoming a commodity at that point.
It's everywhere, right? Exactly. Yeah, it's a known entity, right? There's not that battle of what platform are you on, or what's the protocol that's going to work best. It's kind of established itself as a true standard, right? So, but yeah, Auracast is fascinating technology, and I think you're right. I think that's a really awesome technology platform on which to can really kind of represent the future of audio and sharing of audio, right? And just it's kind of audio everywhere for the masses. That's not restrictive by impairments or issues or whatever. It's like everyone can enjoy it, right?
Yes, yeah. So when do you fly out to Infocom? Like, you're a busy guy.
So I fly out Sunday, so I'll be there the entire week. We've got we got some really cool sessions on the show floor, both on the vision stage and the spotlight stage, as well, that we're super excited about. But yeah, and our booth is C9018. That is the Shure booth. So make sure you come see us in Central Hall. And we'll be showing the new MXA 925, celebrating 10 years of Microflex Advance arrays. We'll be showing those Zoom kits that I mentioned before, along with a ton of other stuff. And it's not only the conferencing stuff. We're also showing a lot of our, pro audio, wireless, our ANX4 scalable receiver, and a number of other, the DCA 901 will also be there. So yeah, it's going to be action packed.
Talking about clip-on microphones and ranges. One thing I really enjoyed was sitting down with Craig and Phil in Bank in the Shure Experience Center and running a range test and just seeing how many microphones is just around that area. Because you're talking about Bank, you're talking about it's all in the name, listeners and viewers. It's the financial district of London, and the sheer amount of microphones that are literally registered in that small proximity is just insane.
It's insane. Yeah. It's super crowded RF environment, right? Yeah.
But this is where, you think, is RF a thing of the past? It's still going to be there for years and years to come.
Oh yeah. I think, we're always looking at ways to kind of be more efficient, use less bandwidth, and pack more channels in. But yeah, I don't think RF's going away anytime soon.
So if the people aren't getting to Infocom, check out the Shure website as well for the latest information.
Shure.com/Infocom is our landing page for the show. It'll be continually updated throughout the show as we make announcements. We'll have videos that are posted there from the show floor. Obviously, watch our social media feeds on LinkedIn as well. We'll have some videos on both LinkedIn, probably some Instagram as well. But yeah, it's definitely going to be, we'll miss you. We'll miss you.
I will.
You're not going to make the trip.
Yeah. Well, I thought one trip to Vegas this year was enough,
I hear you. I hear you.
It's hot. It's hot.
Going there in June is not my favorite thing. I will say.
Have you Have you been back to the Las Vegas Convention Center since the
Not since last Infocom, no.
I tell you, yeah, well, from being over there for CES in January.
Oh, okay.
And that's where I just went, I'm actually quite lost, and it's because of all the developments of all the halls and yeah. So all of a sudden, you're just going, this doesn't look familiar at all. It was like walking into the Rye all over again.
The Rye.
Oh, we all love the Rye, don't we?
I miss the Rye. I love the quaintness of the Rye, right? You know?
Yeah. Or just like their numbering system, which
it's like if you're in Hall 5 and you say, I'm gonna meet you in Hall 10, it's like you good luck.
No, please just meet me outside and we'll
good luck. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Peter, it's been great talking to you. Enjoy Infocom. And I guess the next time we meet up, well, you might be at IBC then in September.
It's possible. I mean, I certainly sure will be there. I don't know that I will be there, but yeah, let's keep in touch, Justin.
Well, thanks to Peter Hur from Shure and my other guests for joining us on this episode of the All Things Techie podcast, episode 149. It's been a busy podcast episode. I haven't kept it under the hour, but I hope you have liked it. Please like, comment, share and subscribe. We'll have more from Infocom and the Dublin Tech Summit in future episodes of the All Things Techie podcast. From me, Justin Dawson, thanks for listening. Thanks for viewing. Like, comment, share and subscribe. Follow me across the socials. And I'll talk to you soon.